Thank you. Quite the honor to be here, and it's a pleasure to see all of you. Who is from Port Townsend? See a show of hands. All right, look at all that. How about Port Ludlow? How about Port Hadlock? Anybody like Squim or Port Angeles? Who did I miss? Okay, I heard you all. All right. All right. As Lynn introduced, I'm the warning coordination meteorologist. There is one of us in every forecast office, 122 of them across the nation. Our primary role is working with all our partners and customer groups to help grease the path with regards to the warning system, and that includes tsunami. Now, a quick National Weather Service 101. I'm from the Seattle office. And our primary mission is protection of lives and property through flood and weather watches, warnings, and advisories, as well as keeping our economy going. As you can tell, that's well rehearsed. Okay? And I want to point out, we're like law enforcement, medical, fire. We're there around the clock and throughout the year. Last week, I was working night shifts. So if I fall over and collapse, you'll know why. All right? It's been a long week thus far. All our partners and customers, there's a long grocery list, and I could put more of them up there. The bottom line is that we work with everyone, and that includes each and every one of you in here. Now, I want to go over a very, very basic concept. And in May of '06, I had the privilege to be a part of a U.S. aid team that went to Thailand to help them build their own tsunami warning system. And I remember being on stage, and keep in mind, I'm talking to 65 high-level Thai authorities, and I have the director of their new National Warning Center. He's sitting on the stage over on that left-hand side. I want you to envision him in a deep armchair, big cushions, okay? Dr. Smith, he's Thai, but he got his education at Stanford. He's no dummy, okay? 70 years of age, by the way. And I got to this slide, and I'm explaining how the tsunami warning system works and how the warning system works, and he jumps out of the chair, and he says, "Can I stop you?" And all I'm thinking is, I just created a diplomatic crisis. But what he asked to do is he wanted to talk to the 65 high-level Thai officials that were in the audience. And he told them to take their headsets off. And in Thai, anybody heard people in Thai talk? It's like they're yelling at him, strong consonants and vowels. And he's pointing at them like this. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what have I done? Okay. Anyway, he gets done. He tells them to put their headphones back on. He turns to me and says, "Can I have this slide?" Oh, whew. No diplomatic crisis. Yes, sure you can. He says, "This is what I have been trying to tell these people for months." Okay? And now I'm going to share it with you so that you can take it home and share it with others. It's very basic. Think of this as a three-legged stool. Leg number one is detection and warning. Paul just described what the National Tsunami Warning Center does. That's it, right there. Detection and warning. That's leg number one of the three-legged stool. Leg number two is dissemination of the warning message to your target audience. So in a winter storm, we've seen lots of them east of the Rockies this year. We're talking a very broad audience, states, a whole lot of them. In the case of like a tornado warning, it's a much smaller, maybe part of a city or a county. This is the hardest part right here, is dissemination, because you want to get the warning message to the right audience. You don't want it to be too big an audience or too small. You want that porridge to be just right. Okay? And the third leg of our three-legged stool is response. Once you get the warning message, do you know what to do to stay out of harm's way? That's what you're doing here tonight. Okay? You're learning more about how tsunamis are generated, how the tsunami warning system works, how I can get more tsunami information when the event occurs. And when Maximilian gets up here, you're going to learn how you can be better tsunami prepared. That is the end-to-end warning process. So how many here remember Hurricane Katrina? Okay, lots of folks. All right. In the states of Texas, Mississippi, and Alabama, it was very well detected and warned, very good dissemination, and great response in those 3 states. But there was a state in the middle that didn't do very well, Louisiana. I see a lot of heads going, yep, that's right. That resulted in over 2,000 fatalities. Fast forward to Superstorm Sandy about 3-4 years ago. 54 million people in its path on the mid-Atlantic coast. Again, very well detected and warned. Great dissemination. We knew about it on this coast, right? And much better response. Of the 166 fatalities, most of them were on the Jersey Shore because I've lived through a hurricane before. This is going to be fun. And then they got into trouble, and we know the rest of the story. So, 3-legged stool. If one of these 3 legs does not work, what happens to the stool? It fails. Yes, that was an audience participation moment, by the way. All right, thank you. All right, to move along. So the goal of the warning system is to really minimize the loss of life and property. And that's in part why you're here tonight. And it's part of what is called a weather-ready nation. Now, I like to describe in this process, when you are weather aware, you are weather prepared. Now, in the case of tsunami, when you are tsunami aware, you are tsunami prepared. And when you are tsunami prepared, you are not scared. Okay? Pretty simple concept. All right. This basically shows the warning partnership. There's only 4,600 Weather Service employees across the nation, so we got to work with our partners, the emergency management community, of which Lynn is a part of, as well as our members in the media and the private sector. Who watches the Weather Channel? That is the definition of a private sector meteorologist, okay? But it's focused on all of you, the public. It's a team effort, and it is all about relationships. When we know each other, we work together, we exercise together. When the real event occurs, bingo, it goes much more smoothly. And again, a part of this weather-ready nation concept. They turned white on me up there. I hope you can read those. Anyway, when we press the enter button to send a warning message. Now here tonight we're talking tsunami, but it could be weather. The point of this is it goes multiple paths. I could put more bubbles up there. The bottom line is simultaneously it's going everywhere. Lynn talked about getting it from the National Tsunami Warning Center when it comes in, and no tsunami generated. Yay! Okay, she's happy. But the point is, she's getting it, and a whole ton of other people are going to get it. And we'll talk about how you can get it here in just a moment. Now, this is a diagram, and you'll find this on our webpage as well. This is the tsunami warning system. Paul talked about what they do up at the National Tsunami Warning Center up in Palmer, Alaska. So this is earthquake shakes. They're measuring from seismic equipment, tide gauges, the tsunami detection buoys. They're putting all this data together to determine, do we have a tsunami, yes or no? And if yes, there's a lot more arrows that go on down here, and I'm going to kind of address that to some degree. I'm focusing on how it gets to you from the National Weather Service. One of the key elements is our NOAA Weather Radio Network. I'll go into details on that in a moment. But it is our conduit to activate the emergency alert system for both tsunami watches and warnings. I'll define those in a moment. But that EAS message reaches all the area broadcasters, radio, TV, cable, your weather radio receivers, including the 2 that are going to be drawn tonight, state and local emergency management officials, those big pillowed outdoor sirens such as the one down in the port of Port Townsend, as an example, and many other systems on here. Tsunami warning messages. Paul alluded to this. Let's go into it in detail. The big one is tsunami warnings. That's a confirmed tsunami, a destructive tsunami, is imminent or underway. The first tsunami warning is issued within 2 to 3 hours away from the epicenter. For areas beyond that, and keep in mind, remember the Japan event, that was all the way across the ocean. It took over 10 hours to go all the way across the Pacific Ocean. Okay, so we got lots of lead time. Let me tell you a little story about that, because Tsunami Watch, this is for the areas beyond that initial warning area. The idea here is to raise awareness, preparedness, and readiness in case it goes to a tsunami warning, because it can be upgraded based on later data that all of Paul's folks are looking at. It can go to an advisory, which means a lesser warning, if you wish, or enough data came in and said, it's over, don't worry, it's over. No tsunami generated, right, Lynn? Okay. All right. Let me tell you a story on that real quick. I had just flown back from Houston, Texas. I was literally unpacking in March of 2011. My weather radio, the same recom radio you're going to get tonight, activates. And I listen, I look at the little LED screen there, and it says Tsunami Watch. And I went, oh, geez, you don't see that very often. So I grabbed my remote, I turned on my television and CNN or whatever I was looking at that point, and I'm seeing tsunami waves washing onto the shores of Japan. And I'm going, oh, this is going to be a big night, a long night. I just flew in, pick up the phone, call the office. Do you need help? Yes, I'll be right there. Okay? That was a tsunami watch. Overnight, as more data came in, tsunami warning was issued for Oregon and California, where they were going to have bigger waves. Okay? But we got the tsunami advisory. We were expecting along the Washington coast waves of less than 1 meter, roughly 3 feet, okay? Not really any significant inundation expected, but it does create strong currents in bays, harbors, inlets. How many here are mariners? Have a boat? Quite a few. In this case, you go down to your dock, you untie, you go out into deep water, make sure you're not next to any of your neighbors, and you ride it out, okay? That's your action to take in that particular circumstance, okay? And again, that's with the advisory. It can also be done for the tsunami warning. The deeper the water, the less you have to worry about, okay? So for here, I'd head out to either Admiralty Inlet or down south to Puget Sound, or I'd head out to the eastern half of the Strait of Juan de Fuca off Whidbey Island or so, okay? That's what I'd suggest. Now, weather radio. Lifesaver for the cost of a pair of shoes. 24 hours a day from the National Weather Service with your latest area forecasts and conditions. There's over 1,000 stations across the nation. There are 22 serving Washington State. And in your area here, your primary one is right in your backyard. It's up on Miller Peak, right in here in the northeast corner of the Olympic Peninsula. If you didn't pick up this brochure, you're welcome to do so. They may be gone at this point. I don't know. There's a lot of you here. But that's your local station right there. How many of you have a smoke detector? I would hope everybody does. What does it do? It detects smoke. It has one job, okay? But your weather radio has a warning alarm feature, just like me when I got home from Houston and got the Tsunami Watch. It alerted me, just like a smoke detector does, because it's an all-hazards warning system, not only for flood and weather warnings as needed, but it's a key element of the emergency alert system. Washington State has adopted No Weather Radio as its all-hazards warning system because of those 22 stations reach over 96% of the state's population. Where do you get these things? For those who aren't fortunate enough to draw the 2 tickets tonight, you can get more information off here on where you can get weather radios at your local radio electronic retailer. And I saw Radio Shack is still open in downtown Port Townsend, amazingly enough. And most of them are sold on the internet as well, including the recoms that we have here tonight. As I mentioned, Washington State has adopted No Weather Radio as its all-hazards warning system. There's a nice shot of the 7 Pillow out at Ocean Shores next to the Shiloh Inn. And with regards to all hazards, we monitor for national, state, county and local EAS messages, including the ones from Jefferson County. And we broadcast all of those on our No Other Radio network. We operate 7 stations here in Western Washington. It reaches all the electronic media at the same time, as well as you, the general public. And over here, just a couple of tabletop models, and here's a handheld. I have this one at home, this is at work, and this is in my car, just to give you an example of how I use it, in case somebody was going to ask that question. All right. When does the Weather Service activate the emergency alert system? These are all short-fused, immediate, life-threatening events. Of course, tonight we're talking about tsunami. So there's your watch and your warning. We also test the system weekly, every Wednesday around midday. And then once a year, we do the required monthly test in October. For those who are not familiar with it, listen. This is a test of the emergency alert system. If this had been an actual emergency, okay, how many times you heard that, right? But that's what that required monthly test is, and all area broadcasters carry that message. So they carry us once a year in October. We do it in part because it's with the Great Shakeout, which I'll finish up with here in just a little bit, but also because it's an opportunity to test the system as we head into the winter storm season. Now, I mentioned this is an all hazards warning system. There are 17 non-weather related EAS event codes. There's some examples up there, but tonight we're talking tsunami. The big one here is evacuation immediate. So here's the scenario. Paul's shop up in Palmer issues the tsunami warning. We activate the emergency alert system and wake up the world, okay? Minutes later, local jurisdictions activate the emergency alert system a second time for evacuation immediate. Getting 2 EAS messages in a matter of minutes, I hope everybody says, this is real, this is not a drill, okay? And to take the appropriate action to stay out of harm's way. Now, for those who are going to be shopping online, you're going to see different kinds of weather radios that are out there. They're not all alike. This is the private sector, by the way. They like to do their own thing. But the key features to have are the warning alert feature. You'll see this term SAME. That means specific area message encoding. You want something about event selection. Now, out on the outer coast, many people just want it for tsunamis. So you can choose tsunami and turn all the others off. Okay, that's entirely up to you. You may want an external antenna in case you have any restrictions, such as terrain challenges that get in the way of that direct line of sight from the weather radio transmitter. Anybody in here have a metal roof on their home? How's your cell phone coverage in there? Okay, it does the same thing to this. Another reason to get that feature on your weather radio receiver. Okay, so that enhances your best reception in that case. Oh, and I have a little brochure here that kind of covers a lot of those details plus more if you're interested to pick that up outside before we leave tonight. Just wrapping up a few more items here. Wireless emergency alerts, our web pages, social media, etc. here. How many of you have have a smartphone? Okay, quite a few. How many have gotten an Amber Alert? Okay, that is wireless emergency alerts. There's 3 categories for them. Presidential, imminent threat to life and property, tsunami warning, and Amber Alerts. It's very unfortunate we have this many Amber Alerts. I really admit that. What is in a wireless emergency alert? You see, there's only 90 characters, and I get this question all the time. Why only 90 characters? I can send something on Twitter for 140. All right, here's what's going on. This is a national system, and behind the scenes, the other coding we don't see, it is directing that particular message to that targeted warning area. Every cell phone tower from every provider, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, who did I forget? T-Mobile. There we go. I can't endorse anybody with the federal government, but I'm here to help you. Okay. All right. So what is carried is what, where, when, what to do, and who sent it. And here's an example of it over here. So that helps explain a little bit about the emergency, wireless emergency alert process. Now, these are the WEA messages, wireless emergency alerts, that the National Weather Service sends. And you notice tsunami is right up here. They started just a few years ago. Tornado warning is there. You'll see these three here. Those are all tropical storm. If we have dust storm warning in western Washington, climate change has arrived. Okay? All right. But you'll notice that's just a pretty small list compared to the other one. Keep in mind, wireless emergency alerts are but a complement to the emergency alert system. They do not replace it. All right, we're almost done here. Our website, how many already have it bookmarked? Got a few hands. I've got the little blue business size cards here for you to pick up. I see a few of you are holding them up. That's good. Thank you. And it really is your best source for local weather information. Who gets frustrated with your Seattle media? I see a lot of heads nodding and chuckling. All right. So there's lots and lots of information on here, including your Doppler radar, which is right over here at Camino Island, next door, essentially. Satellite imagery, a lot more on there. You can get a site-specific forecast for your neighborhood, literally. In my neighborhood, I also I've advertised that there's an hourly forecast on there. I call it the gardener's forecast. My neighbors like that, okay? There's also the zone forecast for this area, as well as your forecast discussion, which is right here, issued 4 times a day by the forecasters on duty. So if you really want to read about what's between the lines of the forecasts and the warning messages, things like levels of confidence and different guidance that's being offered and all those kinds of things. How many remember the so-called windstorm in mid-October? You would have found the voice of reason right here versus what you were hearing out there in the real world, all right? There's so many more sources of weather information now than even 10 years ago. I was telling the radio station earlier, I call them armchair meteorologists, okay? So something to think about. If you want the voice of reason, here's the place to go. How many are on social media? Okay, quite a few. If you don't already like us or follow us, you're welcome to do so. A nice interactive forum, and that includes anybody filming a tsunami rolling on the shores of Port Townsend from one of the hills above. This is a great place to share that, okay? All right. You have a smartphone. Here is a web application to use. This same slide that you see up on the screen is out in the hallway as well. And this mirrors our website, but on your smartphone. I have it myself as well. And one last item off our webpage that I want to highlight. Under additional hazard information, you will find a link for tsunami warnings, bulletins, and background information. So if you want to learn more information beyond what you had tonight, here's some good information to work with. Here's the link for Paul's Tsunami Warning Center up north, one for the one in Hawaii. Here's the data for the tsunami detection buoys, tidal observations that they look at, and a lot of other educational information there as well. We also have a flyer, I call it TriFlow here, called Tsunami Zone. A lot of the information you've learned tonight is here, including some of what Maximilian is going to talk about with regards to preparedness as well. Final item. Coming up on October 19th is the Great Shakeout. They hold this event every year on the 3rd Thursday of the year. And you see it says 10:19 a.m. That's because they take the date, put it during the 10 o'clock hour, and put the minutes right here to match the date. Okay, so 10:19 coming up this fall. That is when we activate the emergency alert system for the required monthly test. All the offices that serve Washington State, including Portland, Pendleton, and Spokane, they have their respective parts of the state, activate EAS, and that initiates the statewide drop, cover, and hold drill. See the kids down here under the table? Even I get under there, and I'm old. But out on the coast, they also practice their tsunami evacuation drill. Now, that can occur here as well, okay? Now, one final thing I want to highlight here is I want to make a distinction between distant tsunamis, such as in Alaska or Japan or elsewhere in the Pacific Ocean basin, we got time, just like we did with the Japan earthquake in 2011. If it's a local earthquake, the Cascadia event, we've been talking a lot about that tonight. That means, I think you correctly addressed it there. Paul and I actually were talking about it as we were driving here, anticipating that question. How long will it take to get here? Roughly an hour and a half, depending on the circumstances, but in the ballpark of about 90 minutes. One other thing I want to point out, there are also earthquake faults across Puget Sound. The Seattle Fault, the South Whidbey Fault, the Tacoma Fault. Those are even more local and dangerous earthquake and tsunami sources here in the Puget Sound area. So another one that you really should be fully aware of. And again, this is an opportunity on Great Shakeout to practice your earthquake and tsunami preparedness. When you practice, you're going to be great when it comes to the real event. And I don't want to steal too much more of Maximilian's thunder here, but that's what he's going to try to emphasize for you, and he'll offer some tools and resources that you can be able to use as well. Again, I'm Ted Buehner, and on behalf of all of us with the National Weather Service in Seattle, thank you for your attention tonight. I hope you've learned something. One final item before I take a few questions. Did anybody pick up any of the coasters? They're out there as well. They were really popular earlier this week out on the coast. What? A pun? No. You know, Lynn, I was thinking about this earlier. You should have had a theme song tonight. Yeah, that theme song would be, I feel the earth shake under my feet. Okay. Any questions, please? In the back.
You mentioned the weather radio having events. Now, back a few years ago when I bought my first one, Sandy just came out, which was a big deal in reducing the false alarm. Event selection is on all of them now, and if so, how granular is it?
The recoms that are being drawn for tonight, all of those events that I described up here, whether they're weather or non-weather, are all in there. Okay? So the bottom line is fully granular.
Translated that in the middle of the night, I can select just Tsunami to wake me up.
That is correct. Absolutely. I can tell you it's very popular on the coast too. Okay? Although some of them have learned, I might want to know about high wind or coastal flood too. Okay? All right, any other questions? Another one down here, and then I'll come here. Ooh, that is bright. South Whidbey Fault, yes. His question is, what would we expect for a tsunami from that? It really depends on how that earthquake occurs. As Paul described, if the earthquake is like San Andreas, where it goes sideways, very little. If it goes vertical, then the entire volume of water, wherever it occurs, is going to be displaced. And from there, gravity takes over, and out she goes. Okay? So let's go back about 1,100 years ago. How many of you have taken the Bremerton-Seattle ferry? Quite a few. Okay. So you pull out of Bremerton, you're heading towards Seattle, and just before you get out into the open water, you look to your left, and there's this flat shelf of land sitting right there. Hardly any trees on it, etc. That was from that event where that part of the land was lifted above sea level. That's how much it rose. Pretty dramatic. And that thing went all the way across Puget Sound. That fault goes right up the I-90 corridor, right through CenturyLink Field, by the way. So it goes right through there, and all of that lifted. So that was a significant earthquake, very shallow earthquake. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm doing fine? Okay. She's nodding her head. Good. I've been well educated, apparently. And so the South Whidbey Fault can kind of do the same thing, and so can the Tacoma Fault. And that created a tsunami that went north-south through the Puget Sound area. Okay? So I don't know if that fully answers your question. The bottom line is when you feel that sharp shaking, Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Seattle fault earthquake was right around 7.0. Pretty significant. By the way, yesterday was the anniversary of the 1949 Tacoma earthquake. I found that a little ironic that we were out on the coast, and sure enough, it's an anniversary of a pretty significant earthquake in this neck of the woods. So thank you very much. You had a question here.
Have you yourself been through an earthquake or tsunami
Have I been through an earthquake or tsunami?
well, like the one up in Alaska?
Okay. Earthquake-wise, I've been through lots of them. Okay, I can think of the Satsup, the Duval. I was on duty at the forecast office when the squally occurred. I can tell you it was 10:58 a.m., February 28th, 01. I know because that's the first time I've ever seen concrete with a wave go through it. All right? I had heard about it. I had never seen it, but I saw it then. And that was the concrete going across the hallway just outside my office door. And we shook a lot, of course, but it was only 40 seconds. A Cascadia event might be 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes of shaking. In Tokyo, Japan, during the March 2011 event, they were shaking for close to 5 minutes. You will know it's a Cascadia event if it's that long. Our Nisqually quakes, and the very ones similar to that, they're usually very short in duration, less than a minute. Should I tell a rather embarrassing story? No? She's got the hook. All right. How many remember the Duval earthquake? That was in the late 90s. I told some of the folks on this road show this funny story. Let me put it to you this way. When the shaking started, I was sitting on the throne. Where am I going to go? I just stayed put, looked at my watch, and said, okay, it started then, and it lasted about 40 seconds. Very typical earthquake of that shallow variety here in the Puget Sound area. Did I get that right? Oh, she's looking up the Southern Whidbey Island fault. She may be able to take some questions when we wrap up here. All right, I think I've gotten the hook from the clock, but we will take some more questions at the end, and I thank you again for your attention.